all about school
Right.
board. I got in a Twitter spat with someone, with 1,000 pronouns and a Ukrainian flag in their bio about how it's a good idea to have these open air drug use areas and stuff like that. And I just asked them the simple question, if someone was an alcoholic, you wouldn't give them a bottle of Jack Daniels, right? So why do progressives in California believe it's compassionate to basically hand the substance to someone and enable them to continue to act in a way that is quite literally killing them? And I fail to see the compassion and how that's progressive.
It's not progressive or compassionate, and again, this is kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, where we need candidates on the left and the right to bring common sense back to the legislature. And sometimes I think we're seeing some of that with the rejection of Chesa Boudin and the school board in San Francisco, and we're seeing voters really kind of like express that they're not. They may be left-leaning, but they're not supportive of these extreme policies. But we really need that to continue to travel throughout the state. I actually don't know how many people actually think that's a good idea. There are some very loud progressive voices that are pushing for policies like that. But I think you have a lot of Democrats that really don't like the direction their party's going on those issues. They're seeing the polling, and they're seeing that crime and homelessness going up in communities isn't really great for election prospects. It's not really popular with voters. And, sadly, we're having to kind of experiment with these things before the Democrats actually realize this. But I'm really hopeful that over the next decade, the Democratic Party starts to wake up and go, wait a second, we can't embrace these crazy policies. One of the things that, and I think there'll also be more opportunities when I'm in the legislature, I hope, for bipartisan, alliances on some of these issues. It's really interesting. The left really embraced Prop 47, which was the proposition passed in California. It was actually labeled the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act or something like that. But in reality, it reduced penalties for shoplifting, and it reclassified a bunch of crimes, and really has led to a lot of the surge in retail theft that we're seeing across the state. But one thing that it did that is never discussed, and maybe not never, but is rarely discussed, is it completely not eliminated, but it completely took away the ability for us to use the drug court system to help get people into substance abuse treatment. So before Prop 47, you used to be able, when someone would, get arrested and they were, on drugs, or they were clearly an addict, you could offer them two options. You could say, here's some jail time, or you can go to substance abuse treatment. And for many of them, they chose substance abuse treatment for obvious reasons. What happened with Prop 47 is it got rid of that jail time in stick, right? So the carrot is still there, but the stick is no longer there. So there's no incentive for anybody to actually go and seek drug treatment. And so what are we seeing? We're seeing an increase in substance abuse and an increase in drug addicts on our streets. It's a huge problem. And then San Francisco is trying to go farther and actually allow it to happen in their streets. I mean, you have little kids trying to walk to school, and you have these areas where people are legally, quote unquote, using drugs. It really does boggle the mind, but I do think I don't think it's something that voters are going to put up with for very long.
So, you bring up an interesting point that Democrats hopefully someday in California start to wake up. And do you think there are more, your opponent pretends he's moderate.
Yeah.
But do you think there are more moderates than there are sort of the loud far left Bay Area progressives like the Alex Lees and the Scott Wieners who put out these bills that you look at and you just go, Like, what are you thinking? Like, what you can tell this bill is completely geared towards your
Yeah.
constituency in, San Francisco, and the inner city of San Francisco has nothing to do with the rest of the state. Do you think there's more Ken Cooleys than there are Scott Wieners? And if so, why do the Scott Wieners and Alex Lees seem to run the party in California?
I mean, there might be, but the reality is the progressive left has done a really good job of pushing their agenda, even on people that maybe aren't fully supportive of some of these things. But they threaten these candidates that, don't, if you don't go along with the progressive agenda, we're going to find someone more progressive and run them against you, right? And so I think the Democratic Party has a lot of infighting right now over those issues. People that want to take the party farther left, and you have some of these people that probably don't want that to happen. They know that's probably not good long term for the party, but they're not quite willing to stand up to the progressive left. I will say, though, there are some glimpses of hope. So there were two bills introduced by Democrats in this legislative cycle on public safety specifically. One would have increased the penalties for fentanyl distribution, and that bill was voted down in Public Safety Committee. There was also a bill introduced by a Democrat that would have made possession of a stolen firearm a felony. Again, a very common sense bill. This was proposed by a Democratic author, and that was also voted down in the Public Safety Committee. So on the one hand, yes, the progressive left really does kind of control things in Sacramento, but there are glimpses of hope. We see Democrats that are starting to put forward legislation that say, we're not going in the right direction on some of these issues, and we really need to change course. So I'm hoping that as voters continue to reject some of these more extreme ideas, that